The blue lights of the monitoring station, Serenity Prime, flickered softly as Communications Officer Velthon checked his instruments for the third time that shift. His 6 arms moved across the control panels with practiced ease, while his large, compound eyes scanned the readouts for any unusual activity in the outer rim sectors. It was supposed to be a quiet night. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations rarely picked up anything more exciting than merchant vessel traffic reports or the occasional meteorite shower. Velthon had been working this shift for 12 standard years, and excitement was not something he particularly enjoyed. His species, the Velonians, preferred peace and quiet above all else. That changed when his main console erupted in a cascade of warning lights and alert tones. "What in the 7 moons?" Velthon muttered, his translator automatically converting his native clicks and whistles into standard galactic. The quantum burst reading was unlike anything he had ever seen. The signal was powerful, focused, and somehow familiar, despite being completely alien to his experience. The signal originated from Kepler 44b, a world the humans called New Eden. Velthon knew about the human colony there. Most galactic species found it remarkable that humans could survive on such a dangerous world. The planet was classified as a Class 7 hazard zone, with gravity that would crush most aliens, atmospheric pressure that could kill, and weather patterns that regularly spawned continent-sized storms. But humans seemed to thrive there. They called it home. The signal itself was encrypted with military-grade protection, but somehow the message had broken through 17 different relay stations across 3 star systems. That should have been impossible. The relay stations were designed to prevent exactly this kind of transmission from reaching the galactic core. Velthon's hands trembled as he began decoding the message. The encryption was human military standard, but embedded within it were translation protocols for 12 different galactic languages. Someone had wanted to make absolutely certain this message would be understood. The decoded transmission made his blood run cold. Coordinates, biometric data, casualty reports. And one word repeated in every language the galaxy knew: help. New Eden's population of 2.3 million humans had been reduced to fewer than 100,000 in just 6 hours. The attackers were identified as the Korth Empire, a militaristic species known for enslaving populations to work their mining operations. The humans had managed to get this one message out before their communication systems were destroyed. Velthon's supervisor, Commander Hixara, floated over to his station. The Hixari were an ancient species, known for their wisdom and measured responses to galactic crises. "This is troubling," she said in her musical voice. "But we must follow proper procedures. Alert the Council immediately. They will need to debate the appropriate response." Velthon nodded and began transmitting the decoded signal to the Galactic Council chambers. He knew the process well. Council would debate for days, maybe weeks, before deciding on a course of action. They would form committees, assign investigators, and eventually send a peacekeeping force to deal with the situation. By then, it would likely be too late for any survivors. On the other side of the galaxy, in a sterile office deep within Luna, Base Admiral Kung Minho was reviewing routine supply reports when his personal communication device chimed with an emergency alert. The device was connected directly to Earth's Deep Space Command Network, and emergency alerts were extremely rare. The decoded signal appeared on his holographic display, and Minho's weathered face hardened as he read the details. He had been in the military for 37 years, had fought in the border wars, and had seen humanity's enemies try every trick in the book. But this was different. This was an attack on human civilians. Lieutenant Park Sola burst through his office door without waiting for permission to enter. Her usual composure was cracked, her face pale with barely controlled anger. "Sir, we've confirmed the signal authenticity," she reported. "Deep Space Command has verified the encryption codes. The message is genuine. New Eden is under attack by the Korth Empire." Minho stood slowly, his mind already racing through the implications. New Eden was far from Earth, in a sector where human military presence was minimal. The colonists there were farmers, engineers, and families who had traveled decades to build a new life. They had no military defenses beyond basic planetary shields. "How long ago was this signal transmitted?" he asked. 18 minutes, sir. The signal bounced through 17 relay stations before reaching us. 18 minutes. More humans could have died.
Oh.
More families could have been torn apart. More children could have been enslaved. Minho walked to his secure communications terminal and placed his palm on the scanner. The machine recognized his biometrics instantly and activated the most classified communication. Protocol in human military history. Authorization: Admiral Kong Minho, Deep Space Command. Activate. Protocol Omega. The computer's voice was calm and mechanical. Protocol Omega activation requires secondary confirmation. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Confirmed. Activate Protocol Omega immediately. Within seconds, the signal went out across human space. Every military vessel within 50 light-years received the same message: drop everything, converge on New Eden. No exceptions. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened human civilians. Captain Lee Junho felt the familiar vibration through the deck plates as the Inexorable dropped out of hyperspace. His ship was one of humanity's newest Hellhound-class dreadnoughts, built specifically for long-range operations in hostile territory. The bridge crew worked quietly around him, their movements precise and efficient. "Sir, we're receiving convergence." Signals from 47 other vessels reported Lieutenant Kim Nari from the communications station. "More ships are arriving every few minutes." Yunho nodded, watching the tactical display as human warships materialized around his position. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and support vessels formed up in perfect formation. Each ship represented years of human military development designed by a species that had learned warfare on a world that tried to kill them every day. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" he asked. "They're still debating an emergency session, sir. Admiral Vextara is calling our response excessive and dangerous to galactic stability." Junho allowed himself a cold smile. The Council could debate all they wanted. Human civilians were dying, and that was the only thing that mattered. 3 sectors away, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their recorded history. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species representatives tried to understand what they were seeing on the gravitational monitoring systems. "Admiral," Vextaris, a crystalline form, pulsed with agitation as she addressed the assembly. Her species. The Zephyrians had been the dominant military power in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They prided themselves on measured responses and diplomatic solutions. "These readings cannot be correct," she declared. "The humans have mobilized over 200 warships. This is a massive overreaction to a simple outer rim disturbance." Velthan, now present as an observer, watched the displays with growing dread. The human fleet was moving with terrifying coordination. This was not the chaotic rush of a panicked species, but the calculated advance of apex predators. "Perhaps," suggested Council Member Tassara, "we should contact the humans directly. Surely they can be reasoned with." Several other representatives nodded in agreement. The galactic community had always viewed humans as somewhat primitive, but ultimately reasonable. They were known for their emotional responses. They usually calmed down once the situation was explained properly. That assumption was about to be tested. Aboard the Inexorable, Captain Junho received the incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. The holographic image of Admiral Vextara appeared on his bridge, her crystalline features arranged in what passed for a diplomatic expression among her people. "Captain Junho," she began, "I am Admiral Vextara of the Galactic Council. Defense Force. We are aware of the situation at New Eden, and I want to assure you that we are taking appropriate action." "What action?" Junho's voice was flat, emotionless. "We have convened an emergency session to address the crisis. A peacekeeping force will be dispatched within 3 weeks, once we have completed our assessment of the situation." The bridge of the Inexorable fell silent. 3 weeks. The aliens thought 3 weeks was an appropriate response time to a distress call. Admiral Junho said carefully, "Human civilians are being enslaved and killed right now. Every minute we delay means more deaths. I understand your concern, Captain, but proper procedures must be followed. We cannot simply rush into a complex situation without careful consideration of all factors. Lieutenant Kim Nari looked up from her station. Sir, we're receiving reports from the other ships. The entire human fleet is now in position. All vessels. Report ready for immediate deployment. Yunho nodded to her, then turned back to the alien admiral. Admiral Vextera, with respect, we will not be waiting 3 weeks. We will be proceeding to New Eden immediately. Captain, I must strongly advise against this course of action. A unilateral military response could destabilize the entire sector. The sector is already destabilized, Admiral. The Korth Empire has seen to that. Connection ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Yunho looked around at his crew, seeing his own determination reflected in their faces. These were humans who had grown up on a world that demanded strength, adaptability, and above all, loyalty to their own kind. Set course for New Eden, he ordered. Maximum speed. Back in the council chambers, Admiral Vextara stared at the blank communication screen in shock. In her 1,000 years of military service, she had never encountered a species that would simply ignore the established protocols of galactic civilization. They disconnected the transmission, she announced to the assembly. Without council authorization, a wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. This was unprecedented. Species were supposed to work within the established framework of galactic law and order. Should ask ourselves why the humans feel the need to act so quickly. Their emotional nature clouds their judgment. Vextara replied dismissively. This is exactly why proper procedures exist. To prevent rash actions that could have far-reaching consequences. But even as she spoke, Vextara could not shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The humans had built their civilization on a world that most species considered uninhabitable. They had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless natural disasters. Perhaps their rapid response was not born of emotion, but of hard-learned experience. Perhaps they knew something about survival that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the council to debate among themselves. By the time they reached a decision, the situation at New Eden would already be resolved, one way or another. The Korth flagship Dominion's Edge hung in space above New Eden, like a massive metal predator. Commander Grakdar stood on his bridge, his forearms crossed in satisfaction as he watched the mining operations below. The humans had put up more resistance than expected, but they were broken now. Their cities burned, their military was destroyed, and the survivors worked in the slave camps. Status report, Grakdar growled to his communications officer. All ground operations proceeding as planned, Commander. We have secured approximately 90,000 human slaves. The rest were eliminated during the initial assault, Grakdar nodded. The Korth Empire had been raiding and enslaving for centuries. Humans were particularly valuable because they could work in environments that would kill most other species. Their Deathworld origins made them perfect for dangerous mining operations. Any word from the Galactic Council? They have acknowledged our territorial claim and are sending a peacekeeping force in 3 weeks. Standard procedure. 3 weeks. More than enough time to complete the harvesting operation and move the slaves to the mining worlds. The Korth had timed this perfectly. That confidence lasted exactly 17 more minutes. The first sign of trouble was the gravitational distortion readings. Lieutenant Vashkal, the ship's sensor operator, stared at his displays in confusion. Commander, I'm detecting massive hyperspace exits at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts? Pirates? Grakdar was not concerned. The Korth fleet consisted of 47 heavy warships. No pirate force in the galaxy would dare attack them. Negative, sir. These ships... They're human. Graktar's confidence wavered. Humans were known to be emotional, but they were also supposed to be weak. Their home military forces were far away, and they had no significant fleet presence in this sector. How many ships? Vashkal's voice cracked. 237 contacts, sir. 237 human warships had just appeared at the edge of the system. This was not a rescue mission. This was an invasion force. Captain Lee Jun-ho stood on the bridge of the Inexorable, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The human fleet had dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding the Korth blockade in a sphere of death. Every angle was covered, every escape route blocked. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kim Nari, "we're detecting 47 Korth vessels in orbit around New Eden. They're moving to defensive positions." "Too late," Jun-ho said quietly. "Communications open a channel to all ships. Execute formation, Wolfpack." The human fleet split into smaller groups, each one designed to hunt and destroy specific targets. This was not standard galactic warfare, where fleets lined up and traded fire until one side retreated. This was human warfare, developed on the world where the weak died and the strong survived. The Inexorable led the first pack, targeting the Korth flagship directly. But instead of charging in for a direct assault, the human ships began to circle their prey like actual wolves. "Activate stealth systems," Jun-ho ordered. "Begin psychological warfare protocols," leaving only brief glimpses as they moved through space. The Korth fleet tried to maintain formation, but they were firing at ghosts. Then the screaming began. Lieutenant Cho Minji, the communications officer, was broadcasting on all Korth frequencies. Not human voices, but the recorded death cries of Korth warriors from previous battles. The sound was specifically designed to trigger fear responses in Korth brain chemistry. "Target the flagship's sensor array," Jun-ho ordered. "Let's make them blind." Inexorable materialized behind the Dominion's edge and fired a concentrated burst of plasma into the sensor cluster. The Korth ship staggered its defensive systems. Confused by the sudden attack, Commander Grachter felt panic rising in his chest as his ship shuddered under the assault. The humans were fighting like nothing he had ever encountered. They did not follow the established rules of galactic warfare. They struck from shadows, used psychological attacks, and showed no mercy. "Return fire," he roared. "All weapons full. Power." The Korth flagship's massive guns swiveled toward where the human ship had been, but the Inexorable was already gone. In its place, 3 smaller human destroyers opened fire from completely different angles. This was not a battle. This was a hunt on the surface of New Eden. Major Osung led his Marines through the smoking ruins of what had once been the colony's capital city. His powered armor allowed him to move through the toxic smoke and debris that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. "Contact ahead," reported Sergeant Limday, his voice crackling through the comm system. "Korth patrol, 6 soldiers." "Eliminate them," Sung ordered. "No prisoners." The human Marines moved through the ruins like ghosts, their armor providing perfect camouflage against the destroyed landscape. The Korth soldiers never saw them coming. Song's team reached the first slave camp 30 minutes later. The sight that greeted them made his blood boil. Hundreds of human civilians, including children, were chained together in the open air. Many were injured. All were terrified. "Medics forward," Sung called. "Get these people medical attention. Combat teams, secure the perimeter." The Korth guards at the camp put up brief resistance, but they were no match for human Marines in powered armor. The armor was designed to operate in environments that would kill most alien species. To humans, it was just another tool for survival. In space, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Korth fleet had been reduced to fewer than a dozen ships, all of them damaged and trying desperately to escape. But the human wolf packs gave them no quarter. "Captain." Jun-ho watched as the last Korth vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The entire enemy fleet had been destroyed in less than 4 hours. Not a single human ship had been lost. Sir Kim Nari reported, "We're receiving surrender transmissions from the remaining Korth ground forces." "Negative," Jun-ho replied. "They showed no mercy to our people. They get none from us." The Deathworlders had come to New Eden, and they had brought hell with them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their 1,000-year history. The Great Chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species tried to process what had just happened at New Eden. The holographic displays showed the aftermath of the battle. The images were disturbing. 2 creatures who had known only civilized warfare. Admiral Vextara's crystalline form pulsed with barely controlled anger as she addressed the assembly. Her species had maintained galactic peace for centuries through careful diplomacy and measured responses. What the humans had done violated every principle of civilized conflict resolution. The human response was savage and completely disproportionate, she declared, her voice carrying across the chamber. They destroyed 47 Korth vessels and killed over 30,000 soldiers. This was not a rescue operation. This was genocide. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Many species had fought the Korth Empire over the centuries, but always within the established rules of galactic warfare. Ships could be disabled, crews could be captured, and negotiations could lead to prisoner exchanges. The humans had shown no such restraint. They violated 17 different clauses of the Galactic Warfare Accords, continued Vextara. They took no prisoners, they used psychological warfare, and they completely ignored our authority in the matter. Council member Tissera, a elderly diplomat from the peaceful Thysis system, raised her hand to speak. Perhaps we should hear from the humans before we make any judgments. They may have reasons for their actions that we do not understand. What reasons could possibly justify such brutality? Vextara snapped. This is exactly the kind of behavior we created the Accords to prevent. The chamber fell silent as a new holographic form materialized in the center of the room. Admiral Kong Minho appeared before the council, his weathered face showing no emotion. Behind him stood several figures that made the alien representatives uncomfortable. These were the rescued survivors from New Eden, and their presence spoke louder than any words. Thank you for agreeing to hear our statement, Minho began, his voice calm and controlled. I understand you have concerns about our response to the situation at New Eden. Concerns. Vextara's crystalline form flared brighter. Admiral, your forces committed acts of war that violate every principle of galactic civilization. Minho nodded slowly. You're right. We did violate your principles. But before you judge us, I want you to understand something about timing. He gestured to the tactical display, which showed the timeline of events. You received the distress signal from New Eden at the same time we did. You decided to hold emergency sessions, form committees, and debate the appropriate response. You plan to send a peacekeeping force in 3 weeks. The chamber grew quieter as the implications became clear. We received the same signal, Minho continued. Our response time was 20 minutes. The difference between 3 weeks and 20 minutes is the difference between saving lives and counting bodies. Lieutenant Colonel Song Hannah stepped forward, her face bearing the scars of combat. Honored council members, I was part of the ground rescue operation. I want to show you what we found. The holographic display changed to show images from the slave camps. The alien representatives gasped as they saw the conditions the human survivors had endured. Children chained in the open air, families separated, injured civilians left to die without medical care. This is what the Korth Empire considers acceptable treatment of prisoners, Song continued. They were not planning to hold these people for ransom or prisoner exchange. They were planning to work them to death in their mining operations. Velthan, who had been quietly observing from the back of the chamber, felt his translator struggling to process what he was seeing. His people had always assumed that warfare was conducted between military forces, with civilians protected by ancient agreements. The idea that an entire species could be targeted for enslavement was beyond his understanding. But surely, stammered Councilmember Tissera, there must have been some way to negotiate, some diplomatic solution. Admiral Minho's expression hardened. Negotiation requires that both sides want to find a peaceful solution. The Korth Empire has been raiding and enslaving for centuries. They target species that cannot defend themselves, and they count on the galactic community's slow response times to complete their operations. The holographic display changed again, showing a detailed timeline of Korth Empire attacks over the past 50 years. The pattern was clear and disturbing. The Korth would strike at isolated colonies, complete their enslavement operations, and disappear before any help could arrive. 17 different incidents, Minho continued. 17 times where the Council's 3-week response time was not fast enough. 17 colonies that were completely destroyed while you debated the proper procedures. The silence in the chamber was deafening. The alien representatives had never looked at the pattern of attacks from this perspective. They had always seen each incident as an isolated event, not part of a larger strategy that took advantage of their own bureaucratic processes. "We have been monitoring your communications for decades," Minho revealed. "We know about every debate, every delay, every committee meeting that has left vulnerable populations defenseless." The signal from New Eden was not just a distress call. It was a test. Admiral Vextara's form pulsed with shock. A test. "We wanted to see if the galactic community would respond quickly enough to save human lives. You failed that test completely." Truth hung in the air like a physical weight. The humans had been evaluating the galaxy's response to crisis situations. They had found the existing system completely inadequate. "So we made a decision," Minho concluded. "If the galactic community cannot protect human civilians, then we will do it ourselves." The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the implications became clear. Humanity had just declared itself the protector of human space, regardless of galactic law. 6 months after the New Eden incident, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Belthan stood on the observation deck of the Serenity Prime monitoring station, watching something that would have been impossible before the humans arrived. A joint training exercise was taking place in the system. Below, with ships from 12 different species working together under human instruction, the sight still amazed him. Human instructors were teaching alien crews advanced combat tactics, sharing knowledge that had taken them centuries to develop. Species that had never cooperated before were now working side by side, united by a common understanding that the old ways of doing things were no longer enough. It's remarkable, isn't it? Commander Hixara floated beside him, her translucent form shimmering with what passed for contentment among her people. 6 months ago, most of these species had never even spoken to each other. Belthan nodded, his compound eyes tracking the movement of the ships below. Avis's cruiser was practicing attack formations with a Zephyrian destroyer, while human trainers provided guidance through secure communications. The cooperation was unprecedented. "The humans have changed everything," he said quietly. "They've shown us that some problems require immediate action, not endless debate." The changes were visible everywhere. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for decades now operated under the protection of mixed human-alien patrol fleets. Colony worlds that had once been vulnerable now hosted defense platforms staffed by volunteers from multiple species. The Korth Empire had been completely dismantled, their former territories now protected by joint peacekeeping forces. But perhaps the most significant change was in the way. The galactic community responded to crisis situations. The old system of committees and 3-week response times had been abandoned in favor of rapid reaction forces that could deploy within hours. Admiral Kong Minho sat in his office at Luna Base, reviewing the latest reports from across human space. His desk was covered with data pads showing patrol schedules, training programs, and diplomatic communications. The workload had tripled since New Eden, but the results spoke for themselves. Sir Lieutenant Park Sola entered with another stack of reports. She had been promoted twice in the past 6 months, her efficiency in coordinating the new defense networks making her invaluable to the operation. The weekly status reports from all sectors. Minho scanned through the data with practiced ease. Sector 7 had successfully prevented a slaver raid on Avis's colony. Sector 12 had negotiated the peaceful surrender of a pirate fleet. Sector 15 had completed the relocation of former Korth slaves to new homeworlds. "Any problems?" he asked. "The usual complaints from the Galactic Council about our unauthorized military activities?" Sola replied with a slight smile. "Admiral Vextara sent another formal protest about our patrol schedules." Minho chuckled. The Crystalline Admiral had never quite accepted the new reality. She still believed that proper procedures and diplomatic channels were the answer to every crises. The fact that her own people now requested human protection for their outer colonies was a contradiction she chose to ignore. "Anything else?" Captain Lee Junho reports that the new joint training program is ahead of schedule. "We now have qualified mixed crews on over 200 vessels across 15 different species." The joint training program had been Admiral Minho's idea. Instead of simply protecting other species, the humans had decided to teach them how to protect themselves. The results had been remarkable. Species that had never considered themselves warriors were now operating sophisticated defense. Networks. Captain Lee Jun-ho, now promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge of his new flagship Retribution. The ship was larger than the Inexorable, designed specifically for coordinating mixed species operations. His crew was no longer entirely human. Dice's navigators worked alongside Zephyrian engineers, while Valonian communications officers coordinated. With human tactical specialists, Sir Lieutenant Kim Nari called from her station, "We're receiving a priority distress signal from the Outer Rim. Coordinates are being transmitted now." Jun-ho moved to the tactical display, studying the incoming data. Another slaver raid, this time targeting a small mining colony in an unprotected system. 6 months ago, this would have been handled by human forces alone. Now things were different. "Signal the task force," he ordered. "All ships, prepare for immediate deployment." The response was swift and coordinated. Human ships moved into formation alongside vessels from 8 different species. The mixed crews worked together with the efficiency that came from months of joint training. This was no longer just a human operation. It was a galactic community defending itself. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Cho Minji, "the Galactic Council is requesting that we wait for their authorization before proceeding." Jun-ho smiled. Grimly, some things never changed. "Tell the Council that we'll file our report after the operation is complete. Standard procedure." The task force jumped to hyperspace, leaving the bureaucrats to debate among themselves. By the time they reached a decision, the crisis would already be resolved. The new paradigm was simple. When civilians were in danger, you responded immediately. When slavers and pirates threatened innocent people, you stopped them with whatever force was necessary. When the galaxy's own systems failed to protect the vulnerable, you built new systems that worked. The signal had been answered. The Deathworlders had mobilized. And the galaxy had learned that some problems required more than committee meetings and diplomatic protests. They required action. The universe was a dangerous place. But it was no longer a place where evil could operate without consequence. Humans had made sure of that, and they were not alone in their mission anymore.